There are men history kills twice. Once with knives, and once with stories. Caligula belongs to the second category. By the time Rome finished with him, there was nothing left to argue with. Only a shape and a silhouette made of accusation. A body stripped of thought. Not a ruler, not even a tyrant, just the myth of degeneracy. And once a man is reduced to a myth, he no longer exists as a person. He becomes a character and stereotype. In the case of Caligula, he became the high priest of depravity. Caligula became emperor in AD 37. He was young, far too young to have shown any sign he would become the monster that followed. He was a cute kid, called Little Bootkins by his father's troops. But he grew up in a court that functioned like a sealed room, filled with whispers, sudden disappearances, and the paranoia of survival. His family had been dismantled by the state. Executions without explanations, charges without evidence. From childhood, Caligula learned a single truth. In Rome, power was real, but reality was optional. At first, he was a benevolent ruler. Prisoners were freed, exiles returned, public cruelty paused, and the Roman elites sighed a deep breath of relief. But Rome never trusts relief. The paranoia was by now institutional. Then Caligula fell ill. The sources say he nearly died and that he returned from illness a changed man. They never agree on what changed, only that something did. After his recovery, the language hardens, and the descriptions of his behavior become more lurid. Motives disappear. He is no longer explained, only described. This is the first sign of erasure. When a man's reasons vanish from the record, his humanity soon follows. He slept with senators' wives and made the husbands wait outside in waiting. He summoned women he took a shine to without warning. He humiliated senators in public. He dressed his favorite horse in the finest silks and fed it gold flakes in his oats. But notice what is missing. There is no insight, no analysis of his depraved and often demented behavior. Only degeneracy without context, and no self-analysis of the society that allowed such abuses in the first place. Caligula stops being a ruler making choices. He becomes a surface onto which moral disgust is projected. In Rome, sexual excess was not immoral. Augustus, the first emperor of Rome, had tried to impose a moral conduct on Romans, but this didn't last long. It was more Caligula's out-of-control behavior that alienated the political elites. To accuse a ruler of uncontrollable desire was to declare him unfit to exist within society. Once Caligula is described as governed solely by appetite, nothing else about him matters. The most devastating accusation was incest. Not because of sex, but because incest symbolized a world without boundaries, where law, kinship, and the structure of society collapses. To accuse Caligula of incest was to say, "This man has exited the human order." At that point, his removal became an administrative inevitability. It was only business, as we say now, nothing personal. In AD 41, Caligula was finally murdered, and another emperor was promoted, and it was business as usual. Claudius was his successor, and he knew the rules. He was the one who expanded the Roman Empire into Britain. But the real killing happened afterward. Statues of Caligula were destroyed, his laws erased. The narratives of his time as emperor were simplified into tales of sexual deviancy. He is no longer permitted complexity. History has replaced him with something simpler and safer, a monster when despotism is not tethered to a moral code. A monster needs no explanation, and the man becomes a caricature. Our sources for the life of Caligula are not neutral. Suetonius and Cassius Dio, who wrote decades later, both senators, wrote with a message. Caligula humiliated the elite, so the elite rewrote him until nothing remained that resembled a political threat, only gross obscenity to sully the memory of an emperor who had humiliated their class, political history as an act of revenge. Take, for example, the myth and the reality of Caligula and horse Incitatus. The story of Caligula and his horse Incitatus is one of the most famous and most misunderstood anecdotes in Roman history. Ancient writers claim that Caligula lavished his horse Incitatus with luxury, built him a marble stable and jeweled harness, fed him oats mixed with gold flakes, and intended to make him a consul of Rome. This story is usually presented as proof that Caligula was mad. But that interpretation is almost certainly wrong. No surviving source actually proves that a horse was appointed consul. What the sources say is that Caligula threatened to do it. That distinction matters. In Rome, the consulship was the highest office the Senate could bestow. By suggesting that a horse could hold it, Caligula was not mocking reality. He was mocking the Senate itself. The message from Caligula to the Senate was brutal and clear. Your titles mean so little that even an animal could wear them. This was not insanity. It was political humiliation of the optimates, the elite class. And this was because a horse in Roman culture symbolized wealth, status, and military power. By elevating Incitatus, Caligula turned Roman values inside out. He didn't need to kill senators. He simply reduced them to irrelevance. And humiliation in Rome was often worse than dishonor. This would not be forgotten. 2,000 years later, the process completes itself. In the film Caligula, politics vanish entirely. What remains is sex and noise and endless excess. It's not history, but a hallucination, with Malcolm McDowell's manic portrayal of the Emperor Caligula. The man has been so completely stripped of an interior life that even his tyranny disappears into the myth of the mad, bad, and dangerous to no myth. Only spectacle remains. So was any of it true? Or was Caligula denied psychological analysis because erasure was easier than understanding the corrupting nature of power? Perhaps he was cruel, and most certainly unstable. But the Caligula who has entered history is not the man who ruled. He is a man who has been replaced by the story of his removal. And that is the deepest horror history offers. Not that power corrupts, but that once a person becomes inconvenient, history can hollow them out until there is nothing left inside the myth of the person. And we will never know the real story.